All right, here we are recording on the Jere Metcalf podcast. We're top real estate agents to how they do it. Thomas Wright on the show. Just in case nobody remembers who you are, which they probably do, you've been on episode number 3, where we talked about listing presentations and new approach. Episode 209, where we talked about focusing on what really matters. And now we're on a new episode in the 300s. I think we're like 380 something. And I'm not sure what we're going to talk about other than to remind everybody you're also a co-owner and partner with Majestic Realty, which is the parent company of Summit Sotheby's, Sierra Sotheby's, and Live Sotheby's. And you're also a top real estate agent in the country, amongst a lot of other things, like you're even a politician.
I have been politically active. That's true.
So where do we start, Thomas? Welcome. Good to see you.
It's good to see you. Thanks for having me back on. I always love being on the show. It's good.
Thanks for coming back on.
Yeah.
Here's a place to start. It is March of 2023. And there's all this talk, and it depends on who you talk to. Maybe there are different agents on different planets of what's happening. But the one thing everybody agrees on is the market shifting. What have you found is the biggest challenge people have with that? And what are they looking for? And what do you think they need in this market?
Great questions. The market has definitely shifted. I mean, you look, we came out of the Great Recession. We had historically low interest rates for a really long time. The economy was tremendous. And then, the pandemic came, and that kind of looked like it was going to be a big hit to the real estate market. And then it turned out to not be a hit. And then the Fed decided to put $9 trillion into the economy. So then it was even more liquid than it was before. And people had more time on their hands. It changed their migration patterns. It changed the needs that they had. And they had tremendous liquidity. So they used that liquidity to get out of cities, to relocate to resort markets and more rural or less urban markets. And then, when the sugar high ended of that $9 trillion, then all of a sudden, the Fed had to tap the brakes to try to slow inflation. And that, sent the market down. And when I say down, Jerry, like we're not seeing big price corrections that the buyers are waiting for. We're seeing an adjustment on volume, in some cases down significantly, the number of transactions. But the pricing is really holding strong as demand really keeps up with the pace of inventory that's coming on the market. So it's a shifting market. And that's the one thing we know about real estate is that it's going to change and that it's cyclical. And the second part of your question is, what do you do about it? If you're a real estate agent, you're a developer, or you're anyone involved in the real estate industry, you do what everybody does in these times that succeeds. And that is you stick to the fundamentals and you get really good at the basics and you remember how you get where you are and you have very strong discipline. And if you can do those things, then you can weather the storm and you know that eventually it will end and we'll be back into a healthier market.
There you go. The market's the market.
Yeah.
Show up and know your market and you're going to deliver.
Yeah.
Now, you get to one place and level of success by doing one thing. Now, you're somebody who's been and is a top agent. You've also been a partner and owner, and you've also been able to be a politician and do well with that in real estate. The one piece of advice everybody would say is tough enough to be a real estate agent. Don't add a politician to that. So in that, you don't get there how you got here. You've hit a lot of different levels in your career. How have you adjusted? How do you adjust when things shift and you shift and your goal shifts? Like, how do you make all that work together to get to the goal and go in the direction you want to go in?
Well, I love the word resilient. I mean, being resilient is really the key. You can't let things set you back, and you can't let what happened yesterday or what might happen tomorrow knock you off course. I was a collegiate golfer and an NCAA athlete. And when I learned really early on that if you want to be successful, you have to live in the moment. You have to be present in the moment. You can't think about the shot you hit on the last hole that you didn't like. And you can't think about the upcoming shot that you might be afraid of or that you want. You have to focus on the one that's in front of you. And I've tried to apply that discipline and that thought process to my business life, where I can't control what happened and the fact that the Fed put all this money in and it screwed up interest rates. And I can't really control when it recovers or if they stop doing that. But I can control what I do today. And if I control the controllables, the things I can control, like showing up, having the right mindset, improving my skill set so that I'm ready when the opportunities come, and then taking action, working hard, showing up and being engaged in what I'm doing, I've always felt like if I controlled those things that I would do well and that I would succeed, and that I could, really conquer anything, whether it was a political race or whether it was something in my business life, that if I was present and I was ready and I was improving myself, that I would be competitive against anyone. And so that's kind of what I've tried to embrace in my life. I try not to look back and I try not to look too far forward. I just try to be happy in the moment and just try to embrace the time I have right now.
Show up with the right mind, show up with the right mindset and the skill set and the right actions. What's the mindset?
Well, I think the mindset is really one of abundance, right? You got to have gratitude. You got to be thankful. You got to see the glass half full. I'm a real believer that when you add up all the things that you have, they're way more than the things you don't. But unfortunately, in life, sometimes we see the scarcity, and that puts us into kind of a negative mind space where we start comparing ourselves. Envy creeps in. We see the deficiencies, and it causes negative thinking, and we miss opportunities in that headspace. So, I just count up all the things that I've been given, all the blessings I have, and try to stay in that mindset. And I'm not perfect at it. I work at it every day, but when I'm grateful and I'm thankful and I'm in a place of abundance, opportunities tend to find me more, and I tend to be more ready for them. And so that's where I try to stay.
It's like attracts like, or you think about, it wasn't long ago that
Yeah.
we were out in the wilderness a lot. And if you saw a stick, or if you saw a snake and you thought it was a stick, that was kind of a bad thing. So you were better to err on the side of thinking a stick's a snake.
Yeah.
But then we go into the business world and we do that. There's our DNA from how many years? And now we're agreed with that. And so we shift that from going, wait a minute, like, take a look. What is that really? That stick's not a snake, it's an opportunity.
Yeah. And that's it. And look, we're in tough times right now, business wise. But that's when all the opportunities present themselves. And when things are easy and good, everybody shows up. But when they're hard and they're challenging and it looks like work, and it is work, a lot less people show up. So for those of us that are disciplined enough and have the right mindset, these markets create tremendous opportunity to seize the moment and to grow.
Seize the moment, grow, and show up for people when they really need you, which goes a little bit into skill set. Like, if you're going to show up for what they really need, you've got to have the skill set to deliver what they need and actually be able to identify what they need. Do you have any great stories of, like, I even think about the Great Recession when we were coming out of that, and having an understanding of what the market was actually doing to guide people, whether it was in the beginning, where it was just a short sell, or as we were coming out of it, identifying we actually aren't in a recession. There are actually multiple offers on properties. We just don't believe it yet because we've been convinced for so long that we are in a recession, that the stick still looks like a snake kind of a situation. What are you have any story for us in your business or in listings or in anything you look at and going, wait a minute, like, this is an opportunity, this problem. Why do agents make the money they make if it's that easy?
It's not easy, right? And every market has its own challenges, but like I said before, in down markets, like, I'll just give you an example. When the market's really good, everybody tends to advertise and want to spend money and to grow their business, and they feel really good and they feel positive. But the time to spend the money on advertising and growing your business is in a down market, because that's when everybody stops doing it. And they stop doing it because they're scared, they're unsure, and they haven't planned very well. So if you plan for more difficult economic times and you can keep your mindset correct, then that's really the time to grow, to acquire a company, to expand your geography, to grow your client base, to improve your skills, because that's when everybody stops doing it. And so I really try to stay in that mindset of, when things are hard, there's just a lot of opportunities, and let's go out and find them and take advantage of them.
When you look at a problem, I think about, like, the book, Stephen Covey's what is that book? Seven Habits of Highly Successful People. And there's the picture, and some people look at it and they see the beautiful woman, and some see the ugly woman, and whatever you see, you don't see the other. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I remember. Yeah, I've seen that. Yes.
Right. And so, I bring that up to say, people come into situations and they, so often they're like, no, it's like, that's a problem. And in that problem is the opportunity. How do you shift mindset? What is some advice or even a story you might have of going, wait a minute, this is the opportunity?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a particular example, but there's a lot of them, right? It just depends on how you approach something, right? Because the way, like you said, the perception that we have as human beings sometimes come from a place of fear and survival. And that was the way we were programmed. And that's why we're still here. So we're thankful for it. But
Yeah.
when you get into a business scenario or into another opportunity, sometimes you have to change that mindset from fear to opportunity, right?
Yeah.
And so there was an example of in the Great Recession, there was a market that I was wanted to expand in. And it was a really hard time for this particular market because of the way COVID hit it hard. And, I was thinking, man, this COVID, it's going to be tough, and I reached out to this particular person in this market and he said, no, I think I'm ready to liquidate. I kind of don't want to go through all this. And so I was tempted to not call and to not pursue this opportunity because I just perceived everybody was going through a hard time and that they wouldn't want to do it, that they would want to get a better valuation in a brighter, sunnier day. And that wasn't the case. And so, having my mindset right and taking the right action led to that opportunity that I'm really grateful for now.
Identifying that you back to show up. You've got to show up for the opportunity with the mindset. To look and receive the opportunity, and with the skill set to know which opportunities are in. What are the best skills to have as a real estate agent? What is skill set? What does that mean? What do you need to know?
Well, skill set is all the things that we need to know to do the job correctly. From reading a preliminary title report to understand that, to how do you market a property, how do you launch a property? That's changed dramatically. How we put properties on the market has been shaped by what we learned in COVID. I don't do that the same way I did in 2019. How do you market a property? That's changed tremendously with video and digital and social media. And then how do you negotiate correctly for your client so that you're not overly negotiating and hurting your client, but that you're also not leaving money on the table? Those are all skill sets. And we have to work at those constantly. They're not things that are equal amongst real estate brokers. I think a lot of clients think they're equal and that we all kind of do it the same way. But if they knew the intricacies of it and the details, they'd learn that they're not the same. And who they hire does matter. And that their home is not selling for a fixed price, but it's selling for a range of value depending on the skills of the agent or brokerage that they hire. And that matters. And so working on those skills all the time to try to reinvent things, to think of how better to do things, I think is key.
Yeah, and something you said reminded me of something you said a while back. I don't remember when and where, but you talked about it's also questions and how you ask people questions. Like you talked about how you market a property, how you launch it. And a question is, who's your buyer?
Mm-hmm.
Who's your buyer?
Where's the buyer coming from? What are the buyer's expectations? Yeah, but see, asking the right questions is a skill set. That's a great example.
Right.
Listening is a skill set, right? We've got to be great listeners, and we've got to dig into things people say to understand what they really meant or what we really meant, right? Because sometimes the words we use aren't exactly the way that we feel.
Yeah. And then understanding how when you learn who their buyer is, you market and position how your broker on a macro level affects that and how you on a micro level affect that.
Yeah.
And then actually knowing what the market's doing, how many homes came on the market today, how many went under contract, how many price drops were there, what are the houses in your market, where are they, all the common sense stuff. But it's like a great reminder.
It is. And the thing is being a real estate broker is rocket science, and it's not rocket science kind of all at the same time, right? Like what we do is pretty basic, right? Like we're not doing brain surgery, but then it's very complicated at the same time because of the human element that exists in it. And so having good skills so you can focus on that human element is critical. If an agent has bad skills, then they can't pick up on the human element because they're too focused on what they're supposed to be doing. And that takes all their attention. And then they miss all these nonverbal cues and all these other things that are going on in the perimeter. And those things are what really shape successful transactions for our clients.
Which is right back. It's self-conscious. If you're self-conscious in the moment because you don't know what you're doing, then you can't be present to actually deliver on what needs to be done.
Correct.
Which goes into what needs to be done.
Yeah.
Actions.
Show
up, mindset, skill set, actions.
Well, actions are the ones that we talk about the most, and that's usually the easiest of those three things for people, right? Taking action, showing up for work or whatever. People tend to be pretty good at that, most people. But if you don't have the right mindset and you don't have the right skill sets, then you might not be doing the right things to achieve your potential. And so then you really have to go back and go, okay, I'm good at taking action. I'm going to work, or I've been going to work for 10 or 15 years, but Am I doing what I need to do to maximize my potential and maximize my earning potential for my family or for myself? And so, those three things really work in unison. And I think when you think of all three of them together, you can be a lot more successful.
So coming down to action steps, we're not going to let you off that easy, Thomas.
Okay.
So you used to talk a lot, and maybe you still do, about episode number 3, the listing presentation. There was a lot of talk about, how many agents, it's like 90+% of the time you see agents scrambling and grabbing and picking things up and running to the appointment. Like, there's an action you might want to adjust.
Yeah, I always joke. I can tell when some agents are going on a listing appointment because the printer's smoking as like the comps come out, you know what I mean? And the printer's smoking and they're running around grabbing magazines and materials, what I call the stack, and they think that's preparing for a listing presentation. And there's a much better way to do it. And I've taught many, many times for many years how to be an effective listing agent and how that works from start to finish. I'm certainly not perfect at it, but I have some ideas that work and I've learned a lot from other people. But that's an example of a skill set, right? That when that opportunity comes, that we'll be ready and that we can perform and execute and we can achieve the result. And a lot of times, Jere, I think agents think that the result of selling the property means they were successful. But that's not the definition of success. The definition of success is, yes, of course, the result matters, but it also matters how the person felt that you were working for. How did you make them feel? Were you an effective communicator? Were you an effective negotiator? Did they feel like they were part of the transaction? Did they have trust and confidence in you? The result doesn't always mean that those things happened. And so at a real basic level, some people think success is the transaction, but at a higher level, it's so much more about trust and relationships and rapport.
That's a great point, because there's a lot of focus on what was your volume, how many transactions did you close, so forth and so on. And it's like, but wait a minute. Now, there are listeners that would say, well, Thomas, why does it, at the end of the day, they may not have known what was good for them, but I did. I got it done for them. Doesn't the result matter? Why is all that other stuff?
Yeah, of course the result matters. I mean, that's why we do this. But I think that's a real basic level of thinking. I think you can get the result and also simultaneously improve the experience that people have, right? Like, we don't go stay at a more expensive hotel because it costs more. We go and stay there because, yeah, it has a bed and that's the result, right? We're going to use the bed to go to sleep and wake up the next morning, but that we're going to have a better level of service and amenities, and we're going to feel better when we leave than if we stay at the lesser hotel down the street. And it's true of cars and other things that we elect to spend more money on. And I'm a believer that luxury is an experience, especially in a real estate transaction. Somebody at 300,000 can have a luxury experience, and somebody at 30 million cannot have a luxury experience. It's not the price point that determines whether real estate is luxury to me. It's the experience that a person is having with their broker, with me. And so my job, if I take the client on, regardless of price point or area, is to give them a luxurious experience where they're listened to, they're heard, they're communicated with, they feel invested, and they have confidence that what I'm doing works. And then when we get the result, that's rewarding, way more rewarding than if none of those other things were happening.
Well, and then when we think about experience, that is what people pay for. That is what has a lasting impact. And experience, we all know this, but when they're not good, that's when people start talking.
Oh, yeah. No, word of mouth advertising when things don't go well is
really powerful. Right? It spreads fast.
Powerful. Yeah, no doubt. And we've all been in situations like that, right?
Yeah.
So got to minimize those, mostly because, not because we're afraid that people will talk about it, but because we don't want them to happen in the first place. And that starts with a real foundation of trust with any relationship.
Yeah. And so what do you do? What do you do? What are the basic ways to enhance experiences for clients? And if they go bad, how do you fix that? Which one of those questions do you want to answer first?
Yeah. Well, I listened to a podcast where it talked about relationships, and it said that 70% of the communication that we engage in with somebody in a relationship, either personal or professional, is lost. Only 30% really has the connection. And so this podcast maintained that regrouping and rethinking and clarifying was the key, meaning that most of our time should be saying, hey, I sent the text, but I also wanted to call and I wanted to re-clarify this and rethink it and regroup. and then decide how we want to move forward. And I think the 70% is really high, but I do believe it, because I think we rely too much on text. We rely too much on nonverbal communication. We're not talking face to face as much as we used to. Even phone calls can be difficult to translate tone, tempo, intonation. So we just have to always be communicating, right? And talking.
But to your point, especially as you get life experience, one of the most valuable things when I'm working with someone and I'm on the receiving end, I need your help, is if I say something and you repeat it back, the value, people long to be heard and they long to trust someone. And when someone repeats it back, it gives me the opportunity to say, yeah, you do hear me. Or number two, correct you. And here's the thing, on the receiving end, when you get corrected, what a great opportunity to let more of the truth come out that may not have come out otherwise. Some of the greatest negotiators, their greatest skill is knowing how to say what to get a correction. Now, human nature is get the correction. No, that's not what I meant, interrupt. But the reality is, when you get corrected, that other person is now tapping into what truth is. They're tapping and giving you information. That's creating the connection. And now you have the opportunity to repeat it again and listen for more. And you might even get another correction.
Yeah. Well, I love what you just said. I love what you just said. And it reminded me of something that just happened with one of my brokers. And a client said, I don't really need to sell right now. And the broker took that to mean that they weren't motivated and that he didn't want to, take their listing and work with them. But when I talked to him, I said, well, tell me more about that. Tell me what you mean that you don't need to sell. And it actually ended up being that he was just nervous that he was going to sell for less than what he thought the property was worth because he misunderstood the market conditions. So it's a perfect example of saying, okay, hey, I hear what you're saying. You don't need to sell. Can you tell me more about that? Tell me what you mean. And then listening and letting people kind of process and unload. And we all need to process and unpack and unload our thoughts and emotions to be heard correctly and to be understood. And that's really the premise of this podcast. It was really powerful that we're missing each other most of the time. And the thesis of it was that successful relationships in business and life are those that reconnect, rethink, and regroup.
It's like we come into a conversation very often with this unconscious bias of what's in this for me. Mm-hmm. And when you hear there's nothing in it, you're done. And the other person's doing the same thing. And so when you come in it going, well, what's actually in it for them? And they sense that. And the simplest thing is back to what you said, repeat what they said. When you repeat what they said and they hear it, it's amazing how that also gives them the ability to hear what's really going on and pause and restate, or even better, I love, now I'm going into mirroring, but when you mirror someone, I never forget, I've shared this, but I don't think I've ever shared it on a podcast. I had a client when I was an agent call and they're yelling, I got you in, da-da-da-da, and I heard them go, you got me into this. And I thought, my God, that's where I need to mirror. And I said, they're going to lose it, but it couldn't get worse. So I just said, I got you into this, and waited a nice long 4 seconds. Maybe it felt like about 100. And the next thing that came out of their mouth was, you know what? You're the only real estate agent we've ever trusted.
That's powerful.
Right?
Powerful, yeah.
Right? Because you come to the conversation with a different lens on to bring those tools to give you not only, that goes back into that skill set and actions that create more opportunity for better actions.
Yeah, it's very well said. It's a powerful story for a lot of reasons, but mostly because you would have missed that moment to be paid that compliment, right? And to be told really why they were emotional. They were emotional because they felt like they trusted you, and maybe something happened where they questioned that. And that gave you an opportunity to reflect and regroup on that and probably re-earn their trust. I bet you have a great relationship with them today.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but that really came from you. I'm just bouncing off what you're saying, Thomas.
Oh, you're nice. You're nice. Very.
Hey, I mean, you're pretty successful. So on that, here you are, an amazing agent, an owner, and we're going to touch a little bit on the politics, because the question, and I've asked you this before, but not on the podcast, is, politics is a touchy topic. You've been able to do this in a really powerful way because it's something that resonates. It's something that's important to you. And politics might even be the wrong word when I say that, like what that is to you. But give us a little bit about, I mean, you even ran for governor for your state, but what, and here's where I come in that. There's this element of everybody says, just be you, but don't. Just be you, but don't tell them who you voted for. Just be you, but don't talk about politics. Just be you, but don't, not really. Like when I see you, it's like, well, there's a lot of you bring to the table. Most people wouldn't, and they certainly wouldn't know how to do it and be successful at it. How have you done it? And what's your advice on that?
Yeah, I just think it's too important to not be involved, and I'm not willing to have my voice represented by somebody else. I wanted to speak up about what I believed in, what I thought was important. And truthfully, when I got involved in 2006, really actively, I didn't see I felt like my voice was missing in the conversation. I didn't see anyone who could represent my voice well, and I wanted to be heard. And so I just decided, you know what, I'm always going to speak up. I'm going to stand up for what I believe in. I'm going to be strong, but I'm going to be kind, and I'm going to be civil, and I'm never going to let my political views dictate my relationships or the way that I treat human beings. Like, human beings are more important than politics. But I do believe in my values strongly, and I'm not willing to compromise on those values. And I'm also not, I'm not, there's some things that are non-negotiable. There's certainly some political things that are negotiable. But in the end, it's the way we treat people. And I just look at the political climate, and we are represented by and large by a group of career politicians that look out for each other, that hand the baton of power back and forth to each other so that they can always be relevant. And the everyday citizens of this country and business people and hardworking Americans are being left out of that equation. And I wanted to be the business person that stepped up and said, I don't have to be a political insider. I can get involved, I can serve, and then go back to my career and not be a career politician.
Which was actually what the country was built for.
Yeah, and it's not what's happening, and then a lot of these politicians that have been in politics their whole lives feign that they're in public service, and they're not in public service. It's their career. And that would be like me trying to make an argument that my real estate career has been a great public service to the community. I mean, of course I've helped the community, but that's not what it is. It's my career. And it's time that they just own it. They're career politicians, and they should just brand themselves like that. And if the citizens of this country want to elect them, that's their choice. I personally don't, on either side of the aisle, want to elect any more career politicians. They've been there too long. They've given up too much to be effective. And they're always worried about their next election. It dictates their every move, their approval rating, the need to raise money. Every decision, it seems to me, that they're making is based primarily on, self-preservation. And I want to see more patriots in our government that are for the people and by the people, and that want to step in and do the right thing and don't care if they don't get reelected or not. And I just don't see that. And so I wanted to be the change. I was taught that if you want to change something, get involved. And so I showed up and I did it. And I'm glad I did. I haven't been successful in everything I've done politically, but I have no regrets. I've enjoyed it. And I'm going to continue to advocate that we need new faces and fresh perspectives in government.
Well said. And when you look at that, what have you learned in your experience in your pursuit in politics? And then I've got some questions about how that crosses over to real estate, but I'd love, like, as you're on that part of your journey in life, what has been your biggest lesson or your biggest aha that's come out of it?
I think in politics, what I've learned is kind of what I said, that it's an insider's game.
Yeah.
The lobbyists and the money and the elected officials, I mean, they're, it's a thing, and outsiders aren't really welcome in that world. And when they get in, they you run the risk of taking on that whole machine, and it is not fun. And that's why some of our best citizens don't get involved in politics. I mean, we have the brightest people this world has ever known in our country. And I look at our political leaders and I don't see a lot of them, and that's sad, because I think they can make some really good decisions and hard decisions that would move our country forward. But I've also learned, on a more positive note, that one person can make a dramatic difference. I was one that once thought that one vote didn't really matter and no one really cared, but one person that speaks up with their state representative on a bill, or one person that shows up to a rally, or one person that donates $5, or one person that will put up 20 signs, or one person that'll call 20 of their friends, does make a dramatic difference. One person matters a lot. And until more of us realize that, I didn't once, I do now, to a little bit more to a little bit higher level. Until more of us kind of embrace that, then we're going to continue to get the outcomes in politics that we have right now, which are very divisive, unproductive, and very ineffective. Look at how they run our government. I mean, it's not exactly working very well. I mean, they don't get high marks for sure.
It's not running the way it was meant to run, the way it was built to run.
Mm-hmm. I mean, look at our national debt. That's both parties' faults. Look at a
Yeah.
lot of the decisions that, are our greatest threats. It's
Yeah.
not one party or the other, it's both. But we're being wedged and divided by them to keep them in power. And until we kind of see through that and step through that and embrace that with the right candidates, then we're going to continue to get that outcome.
Well, it's like we know our values, but until we actually identify a line and work with them, it's going to be it becomes the opposite. Now, in that, because clearly this is like a passion, and I think it is for everybody, right? Which is awesome.
Yeah.
So you've got that, and it's like part of it is like where you stand and exactly why, and there's nothing to argue with there. Now, when you're in the world of real estate and a business owner, sure, there's things that might be beneficial, but there's a lot of things that you might be challenged by and be threatened with because you take such a stance and something that has, as a result of what you just talked about, a very divisive and controversial. People are afraid of it. I've even had stances on things and been told, you know what, you're just going to have to let that work itself out. That's not a safe place for you to go. And you take that advice, and what is back to that's the power of that one individual. So in business, you said, no, I'm not going to take that advice. I'm going to stand for what I believe. I bet there have been some challenges and some opportunities that have come out of that. What are some of the most powerful ones or biggest examples that you could share, with the message being, how do you show up as you in your business, and why is that important?
I mean, whenever you talk about politics, there's a risk, right? I mean, that you're going to offend and alienate people. And I'm personally very driven by my Christian values, and the biblical value to love God and love other people, being the two great commandments for me personally, are governing values for me. And so I number two for me wasn't love your political views and then love other people. So I try to love other people and say, hey, I appreciate the fact that they have a different opinion, but that doesn't mean that I can't state mine and that I can't advocate for mine. And if people choose to be mean and nasty after that, that's their choice, not mine. I can't control that, but I can stick up for what I believe in. And, just recently, I got a call. I was the chairman of my political party in the state of Utah. And I just got a call from the chairman of the opposing party during the time we were chairman back in 2013, 2014, 2015. And he asked me to come over and list and sell his home. And you'd think he'd be the number one person that would not want to work with me, right? But that doesn't mean that I was a sellout to my values or that I wasn't an effective chairman, because I don't think that was how I was viewed. I just think it means that I wasn't willing to put my relationship with anybody over my political views. It wasn't personal. I wanted to win people over to my side by more passionately articulating my position. And you don't do that by being mean and nasty and threatening and insulting and rude. Nobody's going to come over to your side doing that. And you'll feel bad about yourself if you're doing that. So just be kind, be considerate, treat people like human beings, even if they don't agree with you, or even if you don't agree with them. And then just articulate your case and win some people over to your side and see if you can make a difference. That's just how I approached it.
It's like there's a lot of power in showing up for who you are and what you believe.
Mm-hmm.
Like the opposition to your political party actually hired you to list their home, because it's funny how when you show up as who you are, like at the end of the day, when people don't like one another, it's because the truth hasn't surfaced. The real person didn't surface. When the real person actually surfaces, it's amazing. Like whoever they are, when who they really are, who God wired them to be is who's showing up, you can't not love them.
Yeah. And wasn't it Churchill that said, I don't like that man. I need to get him. I need to get to know him better. It was a quote like that.
Yeah, exactly.
There's real wisdom in that. Like, I don't like that person. That means I don't know him well enough. That's what you're saying, I think. And that's powerful. And it's too bad though that politics has replaced a big portion of our life, and it's divided us, and it's created tribal conflicts. I'm in this tribe, and because I'm in this one and you're in that one, we can't agree or talk or interact. That's BS, man. I'll interact with anyone. I have friends from all walks of life. I have friends that are very different than me and have different political views. And I am not willing to sacrifice any human relationship for my politics, but I am willing to stand up for myself. And those two things are mutually exclusive. You can have great relationships and you can be politically active. They're not tied together. And until our society realizes that, more people will be silenced. And I think that's sad, because a lot of people have a lot to say and they don't dare speak up because they're afraid the reprisal and the retribution, either on Facebook or with their family, would be too great. And so they're keeping it all in, and that's just an awful way to live.
Yeah, it really is.
Mhm.
That's really powerful. So many messages in that. I love the one thing you said about, it's not political values and then love God and
Yeah,
then love other people. It's not in that. That's not the order. That's not how
no,
this works, right? I mean, that's just
no.
not how it is. And what's interesting is, even when you look at the Ten Commandments, for example, and not that this is a religious show, but I think it's very relevant to the topic. One of the most profound things I heard was when you look at them, the outcome, it's not this is what you have to do. It's that when you become the person that you're meant to be, all of a sudden these things are no longer things you have to do. They're what you become. They're an
Hmm.
outcome.
Interesting.
They're
Yeah,
an
they're a
outcome,
byproduct.
right?
Sure.
They're the byproduct of becoming the best person that
Yeah.
your best version of yourself. That's just
Yeah.
the outcome. It's
Yeah,
not
and
forced.
look, a lot of people have different
It's your
religious views
power.
on that. I just happen to be
Yeah.
Christian. I'm a big believer in it. It's affected my life very positively.
Yeah.
So, I just share those two things because those are my governing values, right? And I'm not
Yeah.
perfect, but I try, and I try to keep those things top of mind and say, this is why I'm making the decisions, and I'm not willing to have my legacy. And truthfully, Jerry, like when you were in these high profile political positions that I've been in campaigns, you're on TV a lot, and you have a big voice, and I wasn't willing to let my kids see me behave badly.
Yeah.
I was less worried about winning and losing and more worried about the way they saw me. And I remember doing interviews and thinking, like, subconsciously or in debates, like, my kids are watching this. Like, what kind of a man am I going to be? And what kind of an example do I want to be for them and for everyone else, but mostly for my kids? Because, they've been entrusted to me to raise them. I want to be a good example. And I want to show them the way that I think is the right way. And, and so, those values matter, and
Well,
they're in there,
and
and
what's so powerful about what you're saying is how much that correlates to success in general, overall.
Mhm.
Is what you're talking about is, and this has been said a million times, and for whatever reason, Marco Gurjanovic, who's a agent who has just been on the show, his first year in business, he did $250 million in sales. But I met him in Miami Beach, and he said, if you want to be a better person, if you want to be more successful, work on yourself. When you work on yourself, then you get a better outcome. Work
Yeah,
on being a better person first. And what you're talking about, like even in the world of politics, is you showing up as being the better person first,
yeah.
made you someone who could better stand up for what was really important, and also made you a person who's engulfed and brought into your life so much additional success.
Yeah, and yeah, I appreciate that. I hope that's true of me. I try to be that every day. I just think we learn so much more when we listen to opposing views. And I can't
Yeah.
remember when I was chairman of my party, which is, the Republican Party, the conservative party, so to speak. I had a rule for my executive committee. We're not going to watch Fox News. Let's watch CNN and learn the opposing view. One, so we can be more effective against it, but two, we might learn something, right? And I believe that when you surround yourself with different temperaments and talents and convictions and beliefs, you will be superior to somebody that surrounds themselves with people that are similar to you. And I've just always believed that. And that's what I've been taught is surround yourself with people that are going to push you out of your comfort zone. It doesn't mean you agree with them, and it doesn't mean that they're going to change your mind, but inevitably you learn so much from them, and you learn
Right.
so much of their perspective, and they in turn learn yours. And then there's
Yeah.
more respect, and you find more common ground. And that's what's really lacking is we're not listening to each other anymore. We're just in politics. We're talking past each other, and nobody is listening.
Well, isn't it
No.
interesting how everybody's trying to prove where they're right rather than looking for where they might be wrong?
Yeah. And we're all in echo chambers. I'm not, but like, if you're one party watching the station that confirms all your values, that has to be so boring. I mean, isn't it? It
Right.
would be so
Well,
fun.
and here's the thing, it's actually wired to get you upset. It's actually created
To agitate
keep
you.
your attention so you won't turn it off, because we're
Right. And
driven more
that's,
by negative emotions than we are often, if we allow that, than we might be by positive.
yeah. And I mean,
It's easy to react. It's reaction.
one of my favorite things to do with my kids is to watch like a news story and then pause it and say, okay, what does everybody think?
Love
What do
it.
you think? Like, do you agree with that?
Yeah.
What would you do if you were the president? How would you have handled that? Like what? And let's talk through issues and think them through and not be tribal.
Yeah.
I don't think conservatives are right 100% of the time. I don't think liberals are wrong 100% of the time.
Yeah.
But we have some common ground. Can't we focus on those? Like the national debt is our greatest national security threat. None of us want to be in debt. I don't know any American that thinks being $31 trillion in debt is a good idea. Why don't we just focus on that? Like we agree on that. Why can't we get that done? But
Right.
they
And
get that done.
30% of that debt, by the way, is $9 trillion just recently spent this year.
A lot of it. But the previous president that was a Republican didn't do much better. And so
Yeah.
look, everybody has their fair share to go around, but I'm just saying, let's focus on the places where we can find common ground. And then let's get to the hard issues where we don't have any. And that'll be a little bit more difficult, but we'll be good at it by then and we'll be able to do it. But right now we're not good at it at all and nothing is getting done. I mean, DC is just a big dumpster fire. I mean, it is.
Yeah.
And everyday Americans working their butts off, the joke is on us.
Yeah.
We're letting it happen.
But you just said it. We're letting it happen, right?
All right, I just talked myself into running again.
Whether we look at
website up. I'm just kidding.
Nah, let's do it. But like the awesome thing about it is like it's everywhere you look. We look at politics and something we all care a lot about and don't talk about enough. Mm-hmm. But it's the same truths, the same common grounds apply everywhere. Like you're letting it happen. Like we're letting things happen. Like when we look at our country, well, because the people running our country actually don't represent us. That's why it's happening, because we're not showing up, because we're afraid to, because we're afraid of what we have to lose. Yeah. And same thing in our business.
I think our best days are ahead. I think Americans are going to figure it out and they're going to engage in their politics. And I really see a day that things are going to change. I do. I'm very hopeful. I'm very hopeful. It's frustrating though right now. I'm with you, Jere. It's very frustrating to watch.
Well, like for how long can you watch politicians when you actually hear them speak? You go, because some people are like, well, that's not my place. That's not for me. I'm not well spoken enough. I don't understand enough. That's not, because it is now perceived as a profession. That's not my profession. And so it's becoming a profession because people think it has to be a profession when that's exactly what destroys the country. Is it being a profession? Because that's not what the founding fathers built the system to be, not run by political professionons.
Right. And even George Washington, right, had the self-control to walk away when he could have been president his whole life, right?
Yeah.
I accomplished what I want, somebody else's turn. And yeah, we need to get back to that for sure. And some of them have done that. I want to give those few credit. There are some that do that, but it's the exception for sure and not the rule. I mean, some of these guys have been in DC for 50 years or 60 years. You're just like, dude, like 30 years, whatever, 20, 28. I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. So as we look at all that, because it's such a fun topic, let's take that back, because we're going to be closing soon. Okay. But let's take all those awesome lessons that we're passionate, all of us. Like, I don't think there's a person on the planet that can not be passionate about it, which is why I don't watch TV anymore, especially not the news. But take that and like, how do we apply that back to like, those are such, because they stand out so much. They bring these lessons to light that we need to bring to our life in general. What's the best way you've done that?
Be the change you want to see in the world. One of my favorite quotes is, we judge others by what they do, but we judge ourselves by our best intentions, right? So we're applying a different judgment set to ourselves that we apply to other people. So when somebody does something wrong to us, we're really upset about it. But when we do something similar, we give ourselves the benefit of the doubt because we know we didn't mean to do that. And that's actually the right way to do it. We should take that same judgment and apply it to other people and say, we should give them the benefit of the doubt and give people, I mean, people that maliciously are trying to hurt us, and there's bad people out there, don't think that I'm advocating for staying in a
give people the benefit of the doubt until you
but in everyday life, in some of the everyday things that happen, Jere, we've got to be more forgiving. We got to be a little more tolerant. That doesn't mean that we are sacrificing our values or that we're going to let people walk on us. That's not what I mean. I just mean that sometimes we have to say, you know what, I'm going to give that guy the benefit of the doubt. Yeah, he cut me off. I'm mad. But instead of pulling up and causing a scene and putting everyone in danger, you know what? He probably just had a rough day. And I've had those before. And I'm glad it's not me today. And I'm just going to let him go on his way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're just all so wound up. And it's happened to me for sure. But I'm just saying, like, the more we can apply, the more we can be the change we want to see in the world. Like, list the things that you wish were different about the world, and then do those things yourself. Because that's, like I said about my golf, it's the only thing you can control.
What if everybody did that?
Oh, wouldn't it be amazing? It'd be amazing. And it could happen overnight.
What if everybody did that?
It really could happen overnight. Yeah.
Yeah. If everybody did that, it actually could. Yeah. Like, it's actually not that much.
Like,
that's why we say that again.
Not to get biblical again, but turn the other cheek, let it go. 70 times 7, like let's
look at the Lord's Prayer, just saying. Our Father art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Right? Forgive us our debtors as we forgive our debts as we forgive our debtors, or trespasses, whichever version.
Mhm.
It's interesting. And here's the thing about it, everybody listening, Christian, not Christian, whatever. It's not about that. It's about core principles and truths in life. That's it.
Mhm.
It's different things for different people, but at the end of the day, the real message is that. We're gonna have to have a political show and a religious show now, Thomas. Thank you.
You know what? It all intersects.
It really does.
For sure.
That's so important.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just try to be the change, and I'm not perfect, but I want to be part of the solution. I don't want to be part of the problem. And when I mess up, try to take accountability, move forward, improve, get where you want to go, and just give people around you the benefit of the doubt and look for ways to help other people. I've had a lot of people help me in my life in times when I needed it. And I hope that's still the case when I do need more, and I'm sure I will, and I do today. And I want to help other people. And I try to wake up with that humility of, help me to find people that I can help. And soon, none of us will be here. Life is short. Seize the moment and try to change people's lives and change your own in the process.
Be accountable, look for other people to help, and give people the benefit of the doubt, at least until you can't anymore.
Yeah, cut people some slack. You know what I mean? Like, we all need it. I need it. And so does everybody else. And the world will be a little bit kinder, a little bit better place.
Yeah. Back to 3 things. Just 3 things.
That mindset, it's everything.
There goes mindset.
That's everything we're talking about.
Right? Like back, show up, mindset, skill set, action.
Yeah.
Before we close, I am going to ask you final 3 questions.
Oh, good. All right.
But I always do. It's been a while.
All right. I can't wait
believe how long it's been. It's like you're due to come on every 200 episodes is the pattern. Or maybe we'll have you sooner. You're kind of a popular. You're always very popular. You're always at the top of the downloads.
I don't know.
And then, okay, so first question. When you look at your life, what has been your greatest resource for success, or anything else you might just want to share with us today? What is your greatest resource?
Family has been my biggest resource. My relationships, especially, with my wife and kids. My kids are my best friends. My wife is my ultimate confidant, has just been a rock for me. But I think family, just in general, family's like the consistent place you go. It's your safe place. It's the place you can go to talk things through and to unpack and unload and process. And that's been a big resource for me. And of course, I include God and my beliefs in that. That kind of is all packaged together. But I would say, that's been my biggest resource.
Yeah. It reminds me of the book Relentless by Tim Grover. Like, every relentless person, they need their haven. Like, you're going to go out there and you're going to get it, but you need that haven.
Oh, that's so
I actually laughed when I read that book. I actually laughed through half of it. I really did. I love that.
I need to reread it, because that is me, right? You got to go and like figure it all out and go back out.
Right. The quote, I'm just going to give it to you. Or do you have a quote from that book? Because I've got a quote that I just love.
Not one comes to mind. So let's go with yours.
He's on the basketball court, and there's one of his, it's not, because remember, for everybody who doesn't know the book, the guy who wrote it loved basketball, but he wasn't going to be a basketball player. So everybody said, well, good, you just go coach, just go be a coach for high school kids playing basketball. Or he's like, no. Michael Jordan was his first client. Well, another client on the court would lose his head, and he would get on the court and he had this little quote, and you'd actually pull it out and show it to him. And it said, in order to have what you really want, which actually comes right back to our topic today.
Right.
In order to have what you really want, you must first be who you really are.
I remember that. Yeah, it's powerful.
Love that quote. Second question. You ready?
I'm ready. I was born ready, I think. I hope.
So, seems like it. Doing all right so far, but of course I gave Relentless. The other question is your book. Is there a book that you're like, changed my life, gotta read it? Glad I read it, whatever. What's the
I love the self-help books and the business book. I do love all those a lot. If I had to pick one of those that really clicked with me, it was the E-Myth, where it talked about systems and processes. And if you want to be successful, you have to create a process and a system that's sustainable and scalable. That was very inspiring for me at the time I read it. And has shaped a lot of my business career for sure. So I love that book, but I also love reading other books. I'm a Russian speaker. I lived in Ukraine, and I love the Russian
Wow.
authors. I love Dostoevsky and Tolstoy and them, those
Yeah.
authors. But I also, probably the book that like really changed me. You're not gonna really believe it, but Lonesome Dove, like by McMurdy, the character development in that and how connected I felt to Augustus and the whole story and the migration and then the loss and the struggle. I really connected with that in a lot of ways and loved the vision they had of wanting to go and settle Montana and the struggle they were willing to get through to get there and how it didn't really pay off. The journey for them was the reward. And that's a lot like life. Like we always think we're going to get somewhere and then it will be easier. But the lesson there is that it's not easy, the journey or the destination, and that we lose a lot along the way, and that people we love sometimes get lost along the way. And I just really connected with it. And I love the West. I love being an American. It's just in my DNA. I just admire the people who settled our country and who migrated west into all the unknown. I'm so inspired by all
And
of
you know, I love that you say that, because there's this storyline out there that if you're proud of your country,
Mhm.
then you're wrong, because who are you to have pride in something you didn't have a part of?
See, that's interesting. But don't you feel that DNA, like the Western, like the
Right, but I'm gonna, now that would be an argument, right? But here's what I would say to what you said. The thing about it is it's about learning from the people before us, about appreciating what they did, appreciating that journey, and that journey, what that journey gave us was what we have is things that we could pull from and learn from now. And in that journey, there are three things in life. This is Stutz on Netflix. If anybody wants to watch a good documentary, it was Jonah. I forgot his last name, but he's a celebrity. He said, in life, there are three things that that never go away. They're uncertainty, pain, and now I forgot the never-ending need to work. Like there's entropy, like stuff's always coming apart. The never-ending need to work, pain, and uncertainty. You can never take those away. And so in that, recognizing that in that, those just don't go away, but it's having that gives you a pursuit, the pursuit of happiness, by the way.
Mhm.
That pursuit is the joy. If you own that, you tap into that, that is where the joy actually is, not in the destination, but in the journey. Back to your book, Lonesome Dove.
Oh, I love it.
I
love
am
it.
only reflecting back to you what you said to me and what I took from it, by the way. So thank you.
You did a good job. You did a good job. No, I don't know why I was connected with the whole story. I thought it was amazing. And
I love
the
it.
development, and you just feel like you knew him, like I admire somebody that can write like that. So it was very
And
inspiring.
I think the takeaway too for you and for everybody and for us is it is the journey. Would you say that?
Yeah, it's the journey. And I think that's true in real estate, right? Like, it's not like we're going to create the perfect system and then we're going to finally be there. It's always going to be evolving and changing, and it's going to be uncertain, and it's going to be hard. And that's what we need to love about it.
That's where the value comes from. That's where everything comes from is recognizing, like, rather than being so upset because it's not going right, that's what the gift is and the opportunity to change it. That is the journey that brings you the joy.
Yeah, that's it. And you just think they're going to finally get there and everything's going to be rosy, and I won't ruin it for people that haven't, but that's not how it turns out. And it's tragic. And in that tragedy is so much love and friendship and beauty. And that's a real lesson for all of us in life, is those are the things that matter. When you get to the end of that book, you realize that the love and the friendship and the understanding and giving each other the benefit of the doubt and sticking with people even when it's hard, and just all those great life lessons. It was inspiring for me, even though it was, fictional.
Now I'm going to cry, because seriously, like, that is what, like, right? Like, that's what matters.
Oh, that final, like, couple chapters of that book, if you've read it and really paid attention, I mean, I was in tears. It's powerful stuff. I wish I could write like that.
Well, instead, you just sell real estate and own the biggest brokerages at Sotheby's.
I
all that
work
other
with some really
stuff.
talented people. I sometimes get more credit than I deserve. There's
Right. You speak at G&E and they give you the biggest room, and they still have people like swarming. They can't even let you speak, because if you do, nobody else will get an audience. That's who we're talking to here today.
You're nice.
So true. Last question.
Okay.
If everybody listening, which they certainly should not, but let's just say they forget everything we've talked about today, what do you hope that they do? If they just remember one thing, what do you hope they take from this conversation and from you?
Really know what your governing values are so you can make the right decisions in life. What are the things that, not what were you taught should be most important? What did you hope you would think was most important? What did somebody else think was most important? What really is most important to you? And know what those things are. And they change and they evolve in life sometimes. And then go and act accordingly. And if you do that and you know, like, hey, financial security for my family really matters, and it's so much easier to go do the hard work because you know why you're doing it. And so a lot of people say, know your why. I never really got what that meant. It was so ambiguous. I say, know what your governing values are and then act accordingly. If you really say like financial security is my number one thing, then you'll go and act accordingly. And things that you do every day will get a lot easier because you'll know why you're doing it.
Back to Lonesome Dove and the message there.
I'm going to go home and, that
No,
mini
I've got to read it.
bad either. Not as good as the book, but when you're bored, it's a 4-part series, got to watch it. It's good.
Oh, thank you. Thomas,
Powerful.
you're awesome. It's so good.
thanks,
Your
Jere.
time is so valuable. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here and be with everybody listening today.
Thanks, Jere. Thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Jere Metcalf podcast, where top real estate agents tell how they do it. Powered by Breakthrough Luxury Coaching, this podcast was created for real estate agents across the world, coming together, sharing ideas that take their businesses to the next level. Breakthrough Luxury Coaching and membership provide luxury real estate agents tools and resources that win more business, increase volume and sales prices, and create results. To learn more, go to getstarted.breakthroughluxury.com.